To find the personal and positive effects of ethics, I want to turn back to Aristotle. For ethics to be more than a code of conduct, more than morals or laws, there has to be something in it for each of us. Up until now, we have seen morals, laws, and codes of ethics as being restrictive. What we want to look for is something positive that will add to the whole rather than merely keep us from not subtracting from the whole by obeying laws. Can ethics in fact be personal, something that an individual positively strives for and thus improves oneself? Aristotle's treatise, the Nicomachean Ethics, may start us on a different path of understanding the potential of ethical achievement. Aristotle argued the chief goal of all human beings was to obtain desirable things for themselves, including pleasure, wealth, power, honor, and achieving these things led to the ultimate goal of happiness for oneself. This is why some have termed Aristotle the philosopher of common sense. But before going further, we might want to understand a concept put forward by Carl Jung. Closer to our own time, he was a psychotherapist who suggested we all have negatives in our lives. We might be afraid of the dark. We may have had prejudices ingrained in us from our youth. We might easily lose our temper. We have things that hold us back, and we need to recognize and ultimately confront them. Denying them will not make them go away. And that brings us to our quote for this section from Ralph Waldo Emerson, who said, "Most of the shadows of this life are caused by our standing in our own sunshine." So now let's turn to Aristotle to help us shine some light on our own potential and personal ethics. Aristotle equated moral virtue as the golden mean between two extremes, two opposite shadows Jung would have us face. One of Aristotle's famous examples is courage as the golden mean between being paralyzed by fear on one end and being foolhardy on the other extreme. But that would mean for each of us the golden mean of courage would be different. The virtue of courage for one individual would lead to a different level of excellence than it would for another. For someone with arachnophobia, the paralysis would be seeing a spider, but that spider would not affect someone else who did not suffer from arachnophobia. Maybe that person might have vertigo. Aristotle believes ethics has to be relative to each individual's strengths and weaknesses. Thus, in order to understand the extremes, it is important to understand Carl Jung's dark side. If we have a dark side, where does that put us in relation to a golden mean virtue? Aristotle points toward a system of ethics that is really for the individual. Practicing a virtue until it becomes a habit will ultimately lead to our happiness, the primary goal of life. As Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Success, therefore, is a habit. Remember, Aristotle had a basic concept related to motivation. People do things to make themselves happy. Of course, each of us may possess different capacities for happiness, and certainly different things make different people happy. Raindrops on roses are nice, but I've never really cared much for whiskers on kittens. So now let's look at a virtue that may challenge many of us, and that is the virtue of responsibility. I suggest this virtue lies between two extremes. On one end is the consistently relying on external excuses. It is always someone or something else's fault. He or she made me do it. The weather was a problem, or the most grievous of all, time was against us. When we all should know, time doesn't care at all. Each of us has all the time there is. Now at the other extreme is the habit of taking on too much, agreeing to anything and everything, not being able to say no, taking every text message and answering it, loading our daily planner with tasks and no float time. We are overloaded. Between that extreme and the all excuses extreme lies the virtue of responsibility, walking the talk. I suspect it is obvious how developing such a virtue as a habit would lead to happiness, and it is equally easy to sense how such a virtue is in fact an individual ethic made up of our personal choices based on other commitments. Now, let's take a step outside the Greek culture for a moment. I am told the Chinese use two characters to form their word for crisis. One character means danger. Let's put that at one extreme. But the other character is opportunity. Let's put that at the other extreme with crisis in the middle. Now, I don't want to propose crisis as a virtue, but I hope we can see how handling crisis situations by being cognizant of the danger while attempting to take advantage of the opportunity could be a virtuous response for a good leader or manager in work or at play. However, we do not prepare for the crisis when the crisis occurs. We do not prepare for each decision when the point of decision arises. It is how we have honed our skills, our knowledge, our personal attitudes and behavior that allows us to handle each situation. So Aristotle suggests to each of us to develop those virtues until they become habits, and if we do this, we will be ready when the crisis occurs. If the golden rule of doing unto others is the standard by which our ethics should be judged for the whole, the golden mean method of Aristotle is the process by which we improve our ability to contribute to the whole. Let us go one step farther. St. Augustine once said, "Hope has two beautiful daughters, anger and courage." Let's put them at two extremes with hope in the middle. Can we suppress the anger we feel when we know things are wrong and adopt a healthy portion of Aristotle's virtue of courage to change our world for the better? Ultimately, as we use Aristotle's method of improving our virtues, we are in fact improving or raising our own price when it comes to our ethical behavior. Yes, we may still be tempted to drive faster than the speed limit, but perhaps not in an active school zone. There's more than one way to be responsible. Get to the places on time and to still enjoy the journey along the way. We will have some final thoughts on how we actually turn our success with personal ethics to more success for ourselves and for those around us in our final section. But as a concluding reality check for this section, let me suggest a special exercise. Ask yourself, why do you do something? And keep asking yourself why until you get to what makes you happy to do that. For example, why do you go to work? The answer might be because I get paid. Well, why do you want to be paid? Because I have bills to pay. Well, why do you have bills to pay? Because I need food, clothing, and shelter, and a lot of other things. Why do you need food, clothing, and shelter, and a lot of other things? Because I enjoy them. So you work because it gets you the things that you enjoy, makes you happy. Sometimes we are so far from the forest we can't see the trees. If we ask ourselves enough whys, it should lead us to a happiness reason. And if it does not, then why are we really doing it? Of course, the real why answer for some of us might have come right away. Why do I go to work? Because I really enjoy what I do. Whatever the final why, hopefully that is a personal start for all of us on the quest to make ethics work positively for each of us. See you in part 6.